Welcome, everybody. It is October 13th at 5 p.m. local time, and this is part one of a four-part series on ALMA resource sharing. And today we're beginning with consortia models. We have with us today Lily. Hi, Lily. Thanks for joining us, Lily. Lily is going to be presenting this first session. If you haven't already been notified, Lily, can you let me share the screen for one moment, please, and I'll give it back to you. I would just like to point something out to the crowd. So I'm going to share my screen for one moment. Share content. How can I share? Share. There we go. Share. I can't even share my screen. Why is that? Yeah. Why can't I share?
Maybe because you made me host?
Could be. Where is Lily? I will take Lily. Oh, I'm the presenter now. Great. Okay, share my screen. So I want to point out to everybody that we have moved the recordings and the sessions to a new page. We have Customer Education Ex Libris webinars. We've made what we think is a much more organized system here. I'm at exlibrisgroup.com custom education webinars, and I'll send that out to everybody in the chat. So here we have all of the upcoming sessions, which you can filter by product or have them all. For example, if we filter just by ALMA, we have all of the upcoming sessions for ALMA. We're today at this resource sharing. And in the on-demand area is all of the recordings of previous sessions, and soon we will upload this also to the on-demand section. So I will send that out to everybody in the chat, and I will turn it back over to Lily. Lily, thank you very much for allowing me to do that. I will stop the sharing here, and do I need to again make you the...
Yes, please.
Okay, now I don't see you. Oh, there you are. Okay. So, Lily, what's going on here? You can't share right now, Lily?
No.
Okay. Sorry about this, everybody. Grid view, active speaker view. Hold on. Sorry about this. Participants. There you are. Okay. Change role to presenter. Take it away, Lily.
Thank you, Johan. All right, so I'll share my screen. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Lily. I am the business analyst for ALMA Resource Sharing and Fulfillment. I'm also a librarian by training, and I'm presenting the first in this webinar series on resource sharing on the classic model of resource sharing. So this webinar today will look a little bit at the different flavors of ALMA resource sharing. Then it will look at the advantages of the classic resource sharing and when I might want to implement that. A little bit about what it's like in ALMA versus previous or other library management systems. And then we'll leave the presentation behind and dive into ALMA to look at configuration and also some Q&A. We got some questions and some answers for you. So in ALMA, there are 4 flavors for resource sharing, and you can combine between them as well. We have the classic resource sharing where your patron only works with you and you are the mediator between your patron and other libraries that you partner with. And we have the fulfillment network and the automated fulfillment network where your patron can reach out directly to your partners and pick up the items anywhere, maybe directly from your partners. And it's a more tight-knit cooperation. And we have the broker integration, where you have a third-party broker that manages your partners and finds the lenders for you. And that all happens outside of Alma. And in your workflows, the classic model, your patron generates a resource sharing request. You have a borrowing resource sharing request that you manage in your institution. You send a lending request out to your partners. There are different protocols supported in Alma. There's a Rota. You can automate this if you want. And then that partner sends you the item, and then you loan it to your patron directly. You're the only one your patron knows. You control the whole workflow. In Fulfillment Network, I can discover anything from any of the consortium members. I can ask directly from the library I want to deal with. If it's configured, I can have it picked up in any member of the consortium that I want. And the item owner manages that loan, and I interact directly with the item owner. And it uses the regular hold request workflows that I'm familiar with as a patron, and the librarians are familiar with. Automated Fulfillment Network is sort of a hybrid there. I create as a patron a resource sharing request. My home library will have a borrowing request, but if it's sent out to Automated Fulfillment Network partners, they will have a hold request and provide the materials for the patron directly, and have it, again, a little more tight-knit relationship. And brokers, we have a lot of integrations with brokers, usually as a partner of last resort. So if I have a consortium, I might have a classic or a fulfillment network integration with my consortium members. But if none of them have what I need, I might go to a broker and try to find the resource outside my library. And today we're going to focus on the classic. It's an oldie but a goodie. It's a favorite with a lot of people. And it's very good for, first of all, supporting multiple protocols. So we have ISO protocol, we have ANSI protocol, we have British Library, BLDSS. There's a lot of different partner types that you can integrate with and communicate with, and you're not limited to just one type. Or you can go outside your consortium, you can go outside Alma. It's also very, very easily, like I said, combined. So I can use the fulfillment network with my consortium, and then classic resource sharing with other libraries in the area outside my consortium. And then if none of them have it, also have a broker as a partner of last resort. So all of these can be combined. If I don't have shared discovery, meaning if my consortium doesn't have a discovery system that allows my patrons to see what everyone have, classic resource sharing is a good option, because I can have a blank form, or I can discover anything that I want and then get a resource sharing request anyway, even if I don't have inventory for it and I don't know who has inventory for it. So I create a resource sharing request and I put it out there, and I count on my library to find it for me, but I don't see exactly which partners or which libraries in the consortium have it and go directly requesting from them. Also, unlike Fulfillment Network and Automated Fulfillment Network, where the patrons interact directly with my consortium member, so they know them. Here, I don't need to share my patron information at all. So if my relationship with the consortium are the type where we share books, we share love, but we don't share patron information, then classic resource sharing is a good option. And all my patron interaction is with me, their home institution, the fines, the recalls, renewal requests, everything happens with me, and I manage everything for them. So if that's the sort of relationship I want to have with my patron, then classic resource sharing would be a good option for me. And in Alma, we have a few things that take that oldie but goodie classic resource sharing model and improve on it. So one thing is if my partner is an Alma partner and I create an ISO partner and an Alma locate profile for that partner, I can locate materials more accurately, meaning I don't only search my partner's catalog to see if they have something. I can also see if they have any available items on the shelf. And I can even check if their terms of use in Alma define those items as requestable for resource sharing. So I don't need to send out requests and get rejected because yes, they have the items, but they will not share them, or yes, they have that title, but all of their items are currently on loan. Alma can ask the other Alma for more detailed information on whether the item is available and requestable. And that way, my Rota of partners is just those partners that really have the item available and are willing to give it out, shortening the process of locating a viable item. Also, Alma supports a lot of automation options, and they're options. I'm not obligating automatically, but I can. So if I have a few librarians and a lot of workload, I can have a lot of things happen automatically, and I will dive into that deeper into that later, so I won't go into details here. And also, like I said, I don't have to choose that over the other models. I can mix and match. So just a little bit before looking at Alma itself about configuring resource sharing. So this is the basic unit of resource sharing. I have my resource sharing library where I defined the lending and the borrowing setup, the opening hours, the default pickup location, all sorts of things. We'll look at that later. And that resource sharing library goes to a Rota of partners and go to the partners one by one until a lender is found. And then I communicate with that lender, get an item or a digital file for my patron and communicate that to my patron or loan that item to my patron. And in Alma, the configuration of the resource sharing library is important, but also the configuration of the relationship between my resource sharing library and the fulfillment library. I can work with the fulfillment library directly. I can configure it to be a resource sharing library and work in one library only if I'm a small institution and the librarians at the desk also handle resource sharing and I don't want them to go back and forth. That's possible. But if I have a dedicated resource sharing office that isn't working directly with patrons, but is using the desks of the fulfillment libraries in the institution, I can have relationships with those other libraries. I can have them circulate for me. I deliver to them and I supply from them, meaning when my partners ask me for something, I can use the items in this library. And because of these relationships, the setup is also important. If they have a circulation desk and I can deliver to them, then my patrons can pick up items in this desk. Their locations and fulfillment units will say whether or not these items are requestable for physical or digital resource sharing. And like I said before, if something is not requestable, it will not go out. And if my partner is an Alma partner and they're checking with me, not only if I have an item, but also if it's requestable, this is where that is set up. I can have my own circulation desk if my resource sharing librarians deal directly with my patrons and I don't want to have things go into transit to another library. And I can set up temporary locations, and using those temporary locations, I can have different terms of use for different user groups. So I can say, for example, partners, items from my consortium members go to a certain temporary location, and then my users get certain terms of use. And my faculty maybe gets different terms of use for my students and my faculty. And items outside my consortium, but from other partners, will go to another temporary location. and then get different terms of use for my students, and again, different terms of use for my faculty. So that setup of temporary location and fulfillment units allows me the same flexibility when dealing with resource sharing loans that I get in Alma for regular loans. So these are all sorts of configurations that are relevant when I decide how to set up my resource sharing configuration. And if we look at this area here, we need to configure my resource sharing library, circulation desk for that library or in another library, and the relationships. So if we look in Alma, and we want to look at the library details. So I can make any library a resource sharing library. Like I said, I don't have to have a dedicated resource sharing library by going here, marking it as a resource sharing library and filling out all the information. But let's look at the resource sharing library of this institution. And then once I have the resource sharing library, I can have the ISO symbol for it to help in the communication with my partners. I can have all sorts of automatic workflows like automatically activating the locate profiles. I can choose the default location where items coming from a borrowing request or going out into a lending request will go. I also have the option, I will show that later, to create rules for different partners to have different temporary locations, like we said. And I can also do things as a lender, like automatically locate a resource when a request comes in, and even reject it if I don't have an item that I'm willing to lend. I can choose that my library will also will only lend physical items or digital files, scans of physical items, and ignore electronic resources. So all of that is done here in the resource sharing library. If I want to work from the resource sharing library directly with the patrons, then my resource sharing library will need to have, a circulation desk. So I can configure a circulation desk, and here I configure whether or not it supports personal delivery. Especially now in these troubled times, personal delivery can be very important. I can have a hold shelf and say how long I'm willing to keep something on the shelf before someone comes in and picks it up. I can support digitization and do the digitization directly at the desk. And if I don't want to work from the resource sharing library, but I want to work with my other libraries, or I'm willing to do both. So maybe I have campuses. So my resource sharing office works directly with patrons in my campus, but will deliver to libraries in other campuses. Then I have my library relationships where I say, first of all, which libraries I supply from, meaning their items are viable and I can lend them out to my partners, and also who I will deliver to, and they in turn will need to circulate for me. And the law library, like you can see, is not served by the resource sharing library. It can have its own resource sharing library or even be configured to be its own resource sharing library. It is possible to have multiple resource sharing libraries within the same Alma institution if I have separate units serving my patrons. So that's a little bit about that. And then those configurations will affect my workflow. So for example, if I am a separate resource sharing library and I'm sending out things to my fulfillment libraries, to the regular libraries that the patrons work with, when I receive something, it will go into transit to those other libraries and be scanned in at those desks and placed on the hold shelf. So my patrons will be notified when the item is actually there, waiting for them on the hold shelf. And also I can follow up on this item and see it's in transit or was already scanned and already loaned. And as well, the desk can serve patrons directly or not. And then when I configure my locations and my fulfillment units and terms of use, I am configuring the services that my patrons will get. So again, if we look in Alma, when configuring a resource sharing library, I have my temporary item creation rules. And I can add a rule according to different input parameters. So I can create a rule by circulation desk, by days until due date, and most commonly used by resource sharing partners. So like I said, my consortium members can go to one location getting certain terms of use, and partners outside my consortium can go to another temporary location getting different terms of use. I can also do this with item policy because my output parameters are both the location in which I want the item to be created and the item policy that I want it to get. And then again, while configuring a resource sharing library, if I look at the fulfillment units, I have my resource sharing fulfillment unit, which is a local library level unit where I can determine the terms of use for the specific resource sharing library. And here I can add rules, and those rules can be according to user group, but can also be according to location or item policy, allowing me that flexibility of the terms of use that I get. And it's important to note that unlike regular fulfillment units, the resource sharing fulfillment unit has two more types of rules, the borrowing resource sharing and the lending resource sharing, which control the terms of use that my partners get when they borrow a book from me. That's the lending resource sharing. And the borrowing terms of use for my patrons of how they can request items. So that's a little bit about that sort of configuration. And just a few things that I want to note about this configuration is that we've discussed the temporary locations. I would also like to mention that if I'm providing files, scans to my patrons, I have a way to do that as well. And not only do that, but do that in a way that one takes into account copyright rules and usage, and also gives me some flexibility of how I want to provide the actual files. So if we look at digitization and copyright rules, here I have a set of rules. There are some that come out of the box from Exlibris that you can turn on, but you can also create your own. So for example, I have partial or full digitization active in this environment. And if we look at that, so for patron digitization that is partial, I will have an attachment sent via email. It will need to go through approval and copyright clearance, but I can start working on it before I actually have to approve it. I'm not blocked from working on it. I'm just blocked from sending it out to the patron until it's approved. And let's see. If I add a rule now, I can add as a parameter the request type and say for lending resource sharing request, for requests coming from my partners, and have a different rule. Requests coming from partners do not need to go through approval, or borrowing requests do not need to go through approval because the resource sharing people will do the approval and it doesn't have to go through the digitization department's approval. So I have a way to control both how I'm sending out my my resource. I can send a link to the file that I'm uploading to the Alma Cloud, and it stays there temporarily for about a month. This is configurable up to, I think, 3 months. And then my patron needs to click on the link, authenticate with their regular authentication that they use in Discovery, and then be able to download the link. And if I choose that, I can also say that they can do that up to twice, because I don't want that to get out of hand. Or I can send an attachment. For example, if I have a lot of patrons that maybe don't have password to Discovery, they're community users or something like that, and I'd rather work with attachments, I can do that as well. So that's one thing to note about digital document delivery. And like I promised before, we have a lot of automation options, but since I can't see necessarily all the requests, I just want to ask if anyone has any requests so far. Yoel, do you see any requests, questions? Or
Okay. Would you like me to read them out to you? I'll read them out, and anyone can send in a question. We keep them completely anonymous, just so you know. So we won't say your name. Someone said, I think you can drag and drop that little ball, but that was way back. I don't see anything directly from here. One person points out our library is going to be implementing Alma very soon. This was a great option in Alma. Okay, that's all
I'm
we've
glad
got
to hear
noted.
that you like it.
Let me look in
The
the
other
Q&A,
model,
actually. Hold on one moment. I was
yes,
looking before in the, okay, this is all before the session started. I hear you loud and how long does a digitized item remain accessible to the patron? That came in right now.
yes. So this is configurable. I will say right now, if I'm sending a link, I'm doing that as I'm putting the file up as the lender, and then the borrower library sends out the link. And so how long the file will stay depends on the lender's configuration. Okay. And it's up to 3 months because it's a temporary file and there are cleanup options there, but there is a customer parameter where you can determine I think out of the box it's 30 days, 1 month. I will say that we are working. It's a spoiler to a spoiler because there is a sort of sneak peek at the end of this presentation, but we are working on workflows for borrowers to provide such links to upload files into Alma and send their patrons such a link and not just attachments. And then again, it will be configurable in up to 3 months because it will be the same temporary sort of files, but it will have a separate configuration. But that is to come.
Yeah, that's in December, and it's got a new screen. It's a whole new thing.
Yeah. Okay. So if there are no other questions, let's talk a little bit about automation options. So the automation options, like I said,
Wait, Lily, we did while we were
Oh,
speaking, we
yes.
got two of them.
Oh,
For the digital documents, do we need to have them in our resources in Alma, or can they be a file from our database?
so
I'm not quite sure I follow the question. It needs to be in the repository. If you're digitizing something, it needs to be in the repository.
well, it depends on your communication with your partner. So if I'm doing Isaac, Alma to Alma, I can do that sort of link where I upload the file into my own cloud. I send the information to the borrower, and that the borrower sends their patron a link, and they authenticate those patrons, and then they get the file from me. But that's Alma to Alma. Usually what will happen is I will send out an email with the attachment if that's not set up. If I have the patron's information, it can be sent directly to the patron. If my borrower didn't share the patron information with me, I'm sending that file to my partner, and they will get that file and send it to their patron however they want. If they have Alma, they will soon be able to upload that file and send a similar link. Like I said, that's coming in the next few months to an Alma near you. But for document delivery for my own patrons, if it's not resource sharing, then I have again that option of a link. But if I have a link in the on my own servers at the university and I want to send that link, it's also possible in the digitization workflow to put in a URL rather than upload a file and send that out. But that's not resource sharing, so I don't want to get into that in too many details, but it is possible. Okay, you said there was a second question, Yoel?
Yeah. Hold on. Let me go up slowly here. Someone asked if they can digitize an entire book into an ebook.
Well, technically, yes. Lawfully, I think in most countries, not so much. That's why, for example, we have the partial versus full digitization and copyright rules that allow you to see if the request contains pages and if you want to treat that differently. You're sending a file if it's small enough to be sent, and that the size limit in Alma grew, but there are still limits for emails, then you can send it. But as far as I know, it's frowned upon by most governments.
Yeah, nice answer. Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about automation. Like it says here, automation is optional. You can use it, you don't have to, and there are a lot of places where you can implement it. So you can, wherever it's convenient for you to have Alma do things for you, you can do that. So let's look at a few things. One is the Rota assignment rules and automatically activating the locate profiles in the borrowing library. And also you can go one step further and also have sending borrowing request rules and have the whole process from your patron placing the resource sharing request from discovery or calling you and you're placing it for them in Alma. Have Alma assign a Rota, do the locate, choose the partners that remain in the Rota because they're viable, and send the request without anyone interfering on the way. So let's go back to Alma and start with the Rota assignment rules. So here, by the way, if I have a network zone, I can also manage these rules in the network. So a lot of this resource sharing configuration that I'm showing today can be distributed from the network. So if the entire consortia works the same way, you only need to do that once in the network and all the consortium member just get it automatically. But let's look at the rules that I can create. So I can create Rota assignment rules according to different things. I can have level of service or price. I can have requested format. For example, physical, I will have one Rota for the physical and a different one for the digital. For example, we've just completed for November an integration with Rapid ILL, which is another Ex Libris product. So that works wonderful for digital. I might want to have that as the first partner for digital requests, but not for physical requests. So I can go and say for physical, I want one Rota, and for digital, I want another. Maybe for physical, the physical distance of the libraries is important because it affects the cost of shipment and the speedy arrival of books. But for digital, I can ask someone around the world and get it the next day. So I might have different priorities. And I can also do different things for user groups. So for faculty, I'm willing to let them request from the more expensive partners, but for students, not so much. And then I can have my Rota automatically assigned. So I can have a few Rotas. For those of you less familiar with what a Rota is, I have Rota templates here where I can have a Rota that is either ordered or non-ordered. So I'm either always going to this partner, then that partner, then the third partner. And I always go the same order, or non-ordered, meaning I don't want to send all my requests to the same library. So I'm mixing it up and doing it random. And then I just add the members that belong to that Rota. So I might have a Rota for my consortium members, and then another Rota for all the other libraries in my city, and then another library for all the other libraries, or and another for international libraries. And then I can say, first I want you to assign this Rota, and then that Rota, and that Rota, and go down these Rotas by order, so that I know that I'm first of all asking my closest friends, then my neighbors, then the faraway libraries if I didn't find it anywhere else. Once I have my Rota assignment rules, I can have in the library itself, resource sharing library details. I can set up the library to automatically activate the locate profile, meaning once I chose my Rota, automatically send locate requests to everyone on that Rota, see if they have it, and filter out everyone that don't. I don't need to go look at the Rota and say locate. It can happen for me automatically. And once I filtered out everyone that doesn't have it, I can even say, if a certain partner is first in the Rota, just go ahead and send it. I don't need to check it before it goes out to these partners, to my consortium members. We're that close. So let's see. Borrowing. Here it is, sending borrowing request rules. And here I have a lot of things that I can take in. I can take in the partner, for example. For certain partners, I want to send it automatically. Oh, I see the chat. Yes, I'm a huge fan of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and that's why my user is called Forgery. Thank you for noticing. And I can go again by the request format. I can also go by missing metadata fields, meaning I can say, if I have no ISSN, for example, I don't want the request to be automatically sent. I want to have a look at it and make sure that everything is okay. So I can make more complex interventions here that than before, because this is before I'm sending. So I can say send it automatically unless something is missing and I only want to look at those. So lightening my workload a little bit. So that's about before sending. The lending library as well can have automatic locate, meaning when something comes in, I don't need to go look for it. Alma automatically checks if I have it in my institution, in libraries that can provide it to me, because maybe I don't have a supply from relationship. And I can even say I will automatically reject it, so that if I get a request from someone at midnight, they don't have to wait for me to come in the morning, check and tell them, sorry, I don't have it. Alma can automatically reject it, and they can move on to the next partner in the Rota and not have to wait for me. So that is again in the library configuration. So automatically locate resource, and then I can, if I check this, then according to that locate process results, that's the locate process in the lender after I got the request, checking that I have something that can fulfill that request. I can say that if locate fails, I didn't find anything, I want to reject it. But also if I don't have requestable for resource sharing items, then I want to reject it, or I want to reject it if it's electronic. Another sneak peek, we are working on enhancing this rejection to take into account licenses. Very exciting, but still in the works. Okay. And then I also have the option, once I've located an item, I can request for it internally. So if I'm a small library, one campus, my resource sharing librarians have access to all the items. They may get lending requests and then just go directly to the shelf, pick up the books and ship them. But if I'm a big library, maybe a few campuses or a few libraries around the campus, maybe my resource sharing librarians don't have access to everything, I might want to place an internal request, ship physically request or ship digitally request, really asking the library that owns the item to pick it from the shelf and send it to me. And then it goes on their pick from shelf list. They pick it up, scan it in, it goes into transit to the resource sharing library, and I ship it to my partners. And that process can happen automatically as well. So if I do an automatic locate and I find what I need, and my format is physical or my format is digital, I can automatically ask for the item to be sent to me or ask for the item to be sent to the digitization department and have it scanned in for me. So in order to do that, I can set up these customer parameters. So let's have a quick look. Or fulfillment. There it is. So among the fulfillment customer parameters, there are also the resource sharing customer parameters. And I have my resource sharing auto request lending, which is true. I also can have separate setups for serials and for borrowing requests, lending requests, sorry, that have volume and issue information so that I can do the simple ones automatically, but if it's serials and I need something specific, I want to handle that personally. So they're separated into 3 customer parameters. And just to show, I have here a resource sharing library that does automatic locate and does automatic lending requests. And I also have logged out. I've been speaking that long. I also have a partner that has automatic Rota assignment, locate profiles, and sending rules. So if this partner would search the network, and of course, if my patron does this in discovery, that's sort of the same thing. Let's find something that I think I already used this one. I want something that is physically held by my partner, blue-eyed. Okay. So I have my request. It's a physical request. I'm saving it. This is Alma assigning the Rota, doing the locate, preparing the request. Now I have my request. Let's go look at it. Borrowing, there you are. Okay, and you can see that it was sent to the partner. No hands, I didn't have to look at it. I didn't have to intervene. This partner is fine. Nothing was missing. It was sent. And if I go to my partner and look at the lending request that was created, you know what, let's make my life easier. Here it is, and it was located. And if I do manage fulfillment options, I can see the request for ship physically was already created for the main library to pick it from the shelf and send it to me in the resource sharing library. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say we have a lot of automation support and libraries can choose how to use them. Any questions so far? Let me see if I can see the chat. I see someone is asking if we will explain how Rapido will add or differ to these settings and functionality. Well, Rapido is a new generation product. It does wonders, really, but I am not the business analyst for it. I know them, I like them, they're brilliant, but I am not the authority to speak about that. Johan, maybe it's worth setting up a webinar on how Rapido does
Definitely,
it. But
definitely,
it's just
definitely.
a whole new patron experience. It has a database that you can use to let patron know what time frames to expect and see what libraries in the neighborhood have it, and a lot of things that it can do. Again, I like it, but I'm not the expert on it.
We did get a question here, Lily. Is there a calendar you can set? For example, if you are closed for a holiday, can you set it to deflect requests?
Yes. So one thing is the calendar that you can configure, but another thing you can do is in the library setup, resource sharing library. So here you can temporarily deactivate the library for borrowing or for lending. So you can see here that I have temporary inactive for lending, and I can give a date range. And for that time, I'm not working as a resource sharing library, and requests will be deflected. So yes, you can do that here as well. And of course, for the borrowing library, you have opening hours like every other library, and you can be closed to the holidays, and then the due date for the loans will be according to that, so that if students need to return something before before you close for the holidays, so you have time to return it to the partner, it will take that into account. Yeah. All right. So let's go look at some questions. It's always fun to get questions. So my first question is it possible to configure different types of patron queries? I've mistyped this. I apologize. And the answer is yes. Yes, you can. So just a quick, let's look at my borrowing request. That was this partner, right? So I have my borrowing request here, and maybe something is not clear, and I want to send my patron a quick question just to ask something. I can have a drop down. I can have this set up and just add my text here. But I can also set up pre-prepared queries. So the first thing I want to have is I want to have the new and exciting queries. Well, they're not that new anymore. Query. Okay, so my parameter of send query to patron use XSL, I want that to be true because it's nicer. So that's the one I'm going to present. It's the newer one. And I'll just do a quick log out and log in just to make sure that it caught. All right. And then I have my patron query types table here. And I can create as many as I want, or up to 30, really. And then this is regarding your request. And let's say that this is a delay and your request. And this is missing information and customize. And then once I have those types, I can go to the letter configuration. And I have a letter for the patron query. Query 50, that's easier. Maybe that here it is. So query to patron letter. And here I have different labels for my type 1, type 2, type 3. So my header can be Dear Sir, Madam, but it can be otherwise as well. I have subjects for my different types. So type 1 can be missing info, type 3 can be missing information, type 2 can be please note that there's a delay. And I also have my lines that please enter your query. I can have that pre-populated. And then when I have customized this, like I customize really any letter in Alma. That's the nice thing about the query types. They use the same mechanism for letters in Alma. If I would like to send a query to my patron, I now have this instead. So I can say missing information and add a note and send the email that way, saving the fidgeting and adding some things that are pre-populated, and also, translations and all the functionalities that the Alma letters come with. So yes, very good question. Thank you. Let's see what else we have here. Can I choose if rejected resource sharing requests remain active? So out of the box, if a request is rejected, it's completed. But we do have a parameter, resource sharing keep rejected requests active. It's in the fulfillment customer parameters that I've shown before. And this has 4 possible values. The default value is none, meaning the request is completed. And if it's a borrowing request and it got rejected by the whole Rota and now it's completed, Alma will also send a cancellation message to the patron. I can also do borrowing or lending, meaning I want to keep rejected lending requests active, but not borrowing, or vice versa. And both, meaning whether it's a lending request that got rejected or a borrowing request that got rejected, I want to keep it active and keep working on it a little more until I complete it. So the answer here is yes. Another question, privacy question, which is also always so important. Can I use ISO without sharing my patron's information? And the answer is yes, but it comes with a price. So yes, there are 2 ways of doing that. One, if I never want to share my patron's information ever, then I have a customer parameter that limits me from doing so. So again, in fulfillment, other settings, and then resource sharing. Where did it go? Resource sharing block sending requester info. and I can make it true, and that will block that information. But if it's false, I can go by partner. So maybe with my consortium members, I'm fine sharing patron information. They are served by the entire consortium, and we have the legal agreements that allow it, and I have no problem sharing with them. But other partners, I may not want to share that with them. So when I configure a partner of the type where the communication is automatic, so for example, an ISO type, in the parameters, I will have a checkbox saying send request or information. I can check it or uncheck it. The price I was referring to is in order to allow sending a link from my lender to my borrower, that lender needs to have the patron email. So if I'm not sending my patrons information because they get a link that they authenticate in and do all sorts of things with, it's irrelevant to the librarian. So if I'm not sharing my patron information right now, I will not be able to send a link. I will have to have an attachment sent to the borrowing institution, and the borrowing institution will then pass it along to the patron. Yeah, so you can, but please be aware that it will affect your ability to do the lender sends link directly to patron and all of that. Next question is, what do we need to configure in order to use shared barcodes? So shared barcodes is another parameter on the partner, shared barcodes, and you want to have that both in the borrower and the lender. So you need to be coordinating with your partners because they will be sending the barcode in the shipping message, and you'll need to be receiving it and putting it on the temporary item on your end. So you just need to configure it on the partner for your lender, and your lender needs to configure it on the partner for you, and then it will work. If you do this, make sure that you have unique barcodes so that you don't get a barcode that already exists in your system. So if your barcodes include some prefix of your institution and you're sure no one else has that same, feel free to do so. If you don't, then I'd be careful with that. Right, what else? Question, is it possible to limit locate process according to the requested format? So the answer is yes, now it is. It's I think we released this a few months ago, so maybe not everyone knows this yet. Until, again, a few months ago, we had the locate profile setting, which was either ignore electronic or not. And according to that, we would ignore electronic or not. We now have a new customer parameter, resource sharing ignore electronic for physical requests, meaning if the borrower asked me to send them a physical book and I have an ebook, then that ebook can't fulfill the request for the format, and then I will not be able to use it. So my borrower locate profile needs to have ignore electronic false, right? Because when they decide whether or not they want to send me the request, it needs to be, they need to not ignore electronic and send me the request, even if I just have an electronic resource. And we also take into account when implementing this parameter, whether or not you've marked allow other formats in the request itself. So if I'm sending allow other formats, I'm not married to the idea of getting a physical book. If you want to send me a digital file, if you want to send me an electronic, I'm fine with it. Then we will not implement this. But if allow other formats is not selected, meaning I want it physical, and I chose ignore electronic for physical requests, then I will ignore electronic if physical or physical non-returnable format, but I will not for digital format. So it's a bit of a complicated three-way integration. This table also exists in our documentation in the online help, but we now allow ignoring electronic only if my format is physical and the request doesn't allow other formats.
Okay, Lily, unfortunately, we're out of time
We're
here.
out of time, but it's okay because
Yeah.
I'm just completely done.
Perfect.
And I already gave the sneak peek of we're going to improve digital upload and
Yeah.
borrowing side document delivery. So thank you.
Thank you, Lily. And thank you, everybody, for joining. We're going to be posting the recording as soon as it's available. And we hope you'll join us for the next 3 of this 4-part series. And we'll see you soon. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day, everybody.